All right, so let's get started. So, what we'll cover today is the cost of college. We'll also look into ways of reducing college expenses. We'll talk about, how you can pay for college through different vehicles such as scholarships, grants, work study, and student loans. We'll also talk to you about income share agreements, another way in which you can look to finance your college education. We'll go over the FAFSA, what it is, and why it's important to complete. We'll talk to you about the CSS profile, 529 plans, and last but not least, tuition insurance. So, the first question we think about is college worth it, right? College can be an investment in your future in more ways than one. But ultimately, whether or not college is right for you depends on your goals. There are a lot of benefits to a college education. You can gain new skills, explore interests and career opportunities, and you can make a lot of connections that you might not be able to do otherwise. But still, college comes with considerations. For example, having a degree doesn't necessarily guarantee you a high paying career. And if you're paying attention to the job market today, there are definitely some hurdles that you can face when entering into the job market. Plus, it does come with a hefty price tag up front. Not to mention, it could take years of your time to earn your college degree. You may also have a lot of out-of-pocket costs that take some time to pay off. And again, you have to just think of how you're going to do that. But here's the good news. If college is right for you, there are a lot of ways to reduce your costs and bring down what you owe. Let's look at some key ways to pay for college so you can get the education you need to succeed. So let's talk about, again, the cost of college, right? The total cost of college is called your cost of attendance. Your cost will depend on the type of degree you're pursuing, the school you attend, how long it takes to graduate, and your cost of living. So your cost includes a lot of parts, okay? The first is tuition, which is the cost of classes and instruction. The cost of tuition varies drastically depending on which school and program you choose to attend, but it can cost tens of thousands of dollars a year. You may also have to pay fees to the school, such as fees to apply, use school equipment or facilities, or to join student programs. But again, fees are something that you just want to think about upfront when you're looking at the cost of college. Tuition doesn't typically include the supplies you'll need for your classes, like books, for instance. So, depending on what you're taking, you may need to budget several $1,000s each semester for textbooks and supplies. Um, so, once the cost of your education is taken into consideration, you also want to start thinking about where you're going to live. So, it's good to consider your housing, your food, and other costs of living, like your clothes, transportation, and entertainment. With all these costs you start thinking about, it's not uncommon for a four-year degree to, on average, cost upwards of $200,000 and more. Now, that may sound way too pricey, but there's no reason to panic. There are many ways to reduce these costs and get financial aid so that you can afford your education. So let's again talk about reducing college expenses, all right? So there are a few ways to reduce your college expenses right off the bat. The first is to compare your options to make sure you're choosing a college and a program and lifestyle that's good for your investment. First, the school you attend will have a huge impact on your total costs. For example, private schools often cost thousands more per year than public schools. You can also think about in-state versus out-of-state. Your tuition can definitely differ drastically if you choose one or the other. Some schools are also more generous when it comes to their financial aid, so it's important to take that into consideration as well. So, if affordability is your number one priority, take some time to compare the colleges and the programs you're considering. You can find each school's cost of attendance on their website. That gives you an estimate of tuition, fees, room and board, and other expenses. They may also offer calculators that help to estimate like your financial aid so you can get a ballpark figure of what you'll have to pay out of pocket. Next, you can usually buy like your used textbooks, excuse me, much cheaper than new ones. So you may be able to find a student also who's taken a class who would mind giving you a deal on the book, since they're thinking of either, selling it back or maybe keeping it. And if there are fees, now think about the transportation you will actually need as well in college, especially if you're living on campus. You could save money by leaving your car at home. You can consider buying a public transportation pass that will save you money. And some schools even offer a free discounted transportation like a city bus pass. Room and board is also something to think about where you could save. If you're living on campus, consider a cheaper dorm or apartment housing, or consider taking on a roommate or two. If you're living off campus, compare multiple apartments and housing options just to select what's the best for you. So you want to make sure you're comfortable as you're reviewing those costs as well. These are some resources I'll be sure to pass along when you're doing a comparison with your colleges. But College Navigator is a really great tool. It helps you to search for schools by location, by major, tuition, and fees. You can also dive in deep as looking into the enrollment numbers and more. College Scoreboard is a really nice site as well. You can browse the data to compare costs, fields of study, and salaries and debts of graduates, which is really great to be able to compare as you're looking at the full journey of a college education. But then also Net Price Calculator Center. You can use this to calculate, some of the college costs and just factor in also your scholarships and grants. So it can really help you to determine what sort of out-of-pocket costs you may have, if any. Other ways you can look into reducing the cost of living is to look at your food as well and other items, expenses that you have to take into consideration, like your extracurricular, every little expense you might not think of, but it's your day-to-day life, and that's one thing you want to consider. The first big cost is food. So many colleges will give you the option to select a meal plan to eat at campus, cafeterias, or restaurants. It pays to compare your options you may be offered. Okay. So it could be a per meal or swipe plan, and that gives you a set number of passes to the dining hall each semester. Or a point system, which is a set dollar amount you can spend on campus. You might also have an all you can eat option. So if that happens to be available as well and definitely fits, what your needs will be, by all means, make sure to go ahead and go for that. When choosing one, think about how often and how much you typically eat. Paying for meals or swipes you won't use could be a waste. A great way to cut down on costs is to reduce your meal plan, so you're not paying for many more than what you're actually using. Throughout the semester, be sure just to keep track of your swipes and dollars to make sure you're not under or overspending. To avoid running out of swipes on a smaller meal plan, you can even test out your chef skills in your dorm or your apartment kitchen if that's available. Also, keep in mind that colleges are a hotspot for events with free food. So you can usually get a fun evening and a free dining experience all in one. So take advantage of those opportunities. On top of food, you'll be faced with a lot of other optional costs in college, like concerts and shopping trips and restaurants and coffee runs and more. But be careful about your spending habits. Set a limit for yourself every month for how much you're going to spend on these optional costs because it can be definitely adding up. And make sure you stick to that budget. All right, so let's do a quick knowledge check here. Think of some ways in which you can reduce your college costs. So if you want to at the moment, you can enter comments in the Q&A section. And again, just think of some ways in which you can reduce your college costs. All right. So again, we'll go over that towards the end of the presentation. So let's talk about some ways in which we can pay for college. So, even after reducing costs, the price of college may still seem out of reach. This is why some students use financial aid, which is money that can help you cover your college costs. Financial aid could come from the government, your school, or other private organizations. When you're accepted to a school, they'll likely send you a financial aid package, which is an offer listing out the financial aid you're eligible for if you attend their college. Now, aid is generally split up into two categories: need-based and merit-based. Need-based aid is based on your ability to pay for college. The greater your need, the more aid you can receive. Merit-based aid is awarded based on your grades, achievements, interests, and skills. The greater the merit, the greater the money. There are many different ways, or excuse me, types of financial aid. So let's just take a moment to dive into some of the most popular options and understand the differences between them. So, first, we have scholarships. So, scholarships are one of the best ways you can pay for college. Why? Because you don't have to pay the money back. Most scholarships are merit based, which means you'll need good grades or other qualifications to be awarded funding. You can secure scholarships for grades and test scores, also for pursuing certain programs and for your interests and talents like art, music, theater, writing, sports, and more. Scholarships can also offer funding for students who belong to certain organizations and communities. For example, you can find scholarship programs for first generation college students, students of colors, students who belong to churches or community organizations, and members of the LGBTQ plus communities. The list just scratches the surface. When you do a quick online search, it can lead you to thousands of scholarships you might be eligible for. Keep in mind, when you are applying for scholarships, you want to keep in mind the deadlines that are actually available as well. Make sure you note that. You may also need to submit additional materials such as essays, letter of recommendations, a portfolio transcript. So be aware of all that is needed prior to applying and keep track of those deadlines because it's really crucial. These are some of the resources I'll be sure to provide as well, but FastWeb is a really great database search engine for scholarships. It's one of the oldest and largest scholarship search engines available. Over 1.5 million scholarships that are listed worth billions of dollars. College Board is another great site. They have about 24,000 scholarships listed and again worth more than 1.5 billion. Federalstudentaid.gov is a great site. Not only does it help you with the scholarship search, but it also helps show you how to avoid scams. So that's one thing you want to do as you're applying, protecting your information. And lastly, Go Marry is a really great website. It's one of the top 12 websites for browsing scholarships. So I'll be sure to include those links in the recap email. Next, let's talk about grants. Grants are another form of aid you don't need to pay back. However, grants are usually need-based. So your eligibility depends on your income and financial need rather than your grades and accomplishments. To find out if you qualify for a grant from the government or from your school, you'll have to fill out an application called the FAFSA. Then you'll receive financial aid offers that will tell you if you're eligible for any grants. It'll also tell you the amount of funding you can get, and that may vary from year to year. While they're often harder to find, you can search for private grants the same way you search for scholarships. Check with your school, local organizations, and search online for grant opportunities that are a good fit for you. In general, you want to accept all the free money like scholarships and grants you can before you start looking into other forms of aid you have to pay back, like loans. Next, let's talk about work study. Federal Work Study is a program sponsored by the government that can help you pay for college. So basically, you can work certain part time jobs in college for a paycheck in return to help you cover your living expenses while enrolled in school. Work study is only offered at schools participating in the federal work study program. You can apply for work study by filling out the FAFSA, the same application you use to apply for all federal aid. Before you apply, keep in mind that having a work study award does not guarantee you a work study job. You'll still have to find a job through your school. So you may need to work on or off campus, either directly for the school or for an organization your school partners with, like a nonprofit or government agency. You're guaranteed to at least earn the federal minimum wage that you'll receive that. And again, you'll also receive that money directly from the school. Just remember that when you receive your work study award, there's a limit to how much you can earn per year. So your hours, again, they'll depend on how much you're able to earn. But a really great opportunity if you're awarded to be able to use in order to fund your college education. So next, let's talk about student loans. Once you've received and accepted all the financial aid you don't have to pay back, you may need to use loans to cover the rest. A student loan is money that can help you pay for college that you have to pay back later, usually with an extra amount on top called interest. There are two types of student loans, federal and private. Federal student loans are provided by the government. They have flexible repayment options and generally low interest rates. Loans are available for undergraduates and graduate students and even parents of the students. Like other forms of federal aid, you'll need to fill out a FAFSA to find out how much you're able to borrow. You also have private student loans. They're a form of non government lenders, usually banks and credit unions or anyone else with money to lend. Private student loans tend to have less flexible repayment options and higher interest rates, but each loan is different. To apply for private loans, you'll have to fill out applications and be approved by each private lender. Your financial situation and factors like your credit history will determine how much you can borrow and what your interest rate and terms will be. A big difference between student loans and some other forms of aid is that student loans can be used for a lot of different expenses, from your tuition to like your cost of living. While scholarships and grants may only go towards covering your tuition, you could use a student loan to help with your additional cost of living while you're enrolled in college. So again, just keep that in mind when you're looking at student loan options. Now, when it comes to selecting loans, there are a lot of options. So, one thing you want to do is how do you determine what's right for you? Again, federal loans typically have better rates and offer flexible options than private loans. So, you want to definitely explore federal loans first. But there are a few other things to look into as well. Student loans come with interest, which is an amount you have to pay back on top of what you borrowed. The lower your interest rate, the less you'll have to pay to borrow the money. So look for lower interest rates when you're exploring. You'll also probably see two big terms around loans when it's time to borrow: subsidized and unsubsidized. These terms tell you when your interest starts accruing. That means adding up. The longer your interest accrues and adds up, the more money you'll pay. Many loans, including some federal loans, are subsidized, which means that interest won't start accruing while you're enrolled in school, at least half time. Once you leave school and start repaying, interest starts accruing. On the other hand, most private loans and some federal loans are unsubsidized. That means that interest starts accruing as soon as you borrow, even while you're still in school. So if you borrow $1,000 your freshman year, when you graduate, you'll owe $1,000 plus 4 years worth of interest. So to avoid paying more interest than you have to, look for lower interest rates in subsidized loans first. Next, let's talk about a special type of loan you may have never heard of before. It's called income share agreement. So here's how it works. A private lender provides funding for your college. You pay them back a percentage of your income after you graduate for a set amount of time. Your terms can vary a lot based on your lender and even your college major. For example, let's say you borrow $10,000 from an ISA. You agree to pay back your lender 5% of your salary after graduation for 4 years. No matter what your salary is, you owe them 5% of it for 4 years. This can make ISAs a bit of a risk. You could repay less than you borrowed, but you could also repay a lot more. That's why it's important to look at four main features of income share agreements. Your income share percentage, which is how much of your income you'll pay your lender each month, like 5% of your income. Your repayment term, which is how long you have to make payments. The salary floor, or the minimum salary you have to make for payments to be due. And your payment cap. That's the max amount of money you'll have to repay total. So, again, pay attention to these terms on your contract to make sure you can afford your payments and that you won't overpay in the end. For many, an ISA is a favorable alternative to high interest loans, partly because ISAs typically don't accrue interest. Still, you'll likely pay back more than you borrowed. So it's important to note that many borrowers, explore ISAs only after they've taken all grants, scholarships, and federal loans that are available. All right, so let's do a quick knowledge check. So you have a student, Lee. He took out an unsubsidized loan for $4,000 his freshman year and didn't make any payments until he graduated 4 years later. How much debt will Lee have when he graduates? Would it be 4,000 or 4,000 plus 4 years worth of interest? And so again, remember, unsubsidized loans start accruing interest when you're in school. So if you said 4,000 plus 4 years worth of interest, you are correct. Because again, the unsubsidized loans start accruing interest when you're in school. So when you graduate, you'll have the original amount of debt plus years of interest. All right, let's talk about FAFSAs. To apply for any of the federal aid we mentioned, and sometimes aid from your school, you'll need to fill out an application called the FAFSA, aka the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The FAFSA is your key to accessing federal grants, loans, work study awards, and more. The questions on the FAFSA are used to determine your financial needs because any money you receive from the federal government is need based. So you won't be asked any questions about your grades or achievements. Now, after you submit your FAFSA, you'll receive a student aid report, SAR. It covers the federal financial aid you're eligible for, including any loans, grants, scholarships, and work study. Your student aid report will also include your student aid index, which is a number that's calculated based on your FAFSA information. It measures the resources you have available to help you pay for college. Colleges use your student aid index to calculate how much financial aid you're eligible to receive. The lower your index, the more aid you could qualify for. Next, the CSS profile. So submitting the FAFSA is required to be eligible for federal aid, but not all schools use the FAFSA for their aid. Some use the CSS profile, an online application provided by an organization called College Board to determine your eligibility for their financial aid. Like the FAFSA, the CSS profile determines your financial need and doesn't focus on your grades or achievements. So, how do you know if you need to submit the CSS profile? First, find out if your school accepts the FAFSA or if it requires you to fill out the CSS profile. You can check with the school itself or visit the CSS profiles website to find the list of applicable schools. Each school may have a different deadline to submit the CSS profile application. So check with each school you're applying to make sure that you meet their deadlines. After you take advantage of all the financial aid, you may still need to rely on your own savings to cover some of your college costs. So you can use a variety of savings and investments accounts to do so. One popular option is a 529 plan. This is a savings and investment account with tax advantages. You can use to cover certain education expenses from kindergarten all the way through graduate school. You can even use it to help you pay for your student loans up to a certain limit. 529 plans are a bit different than most savings accounts because anyone can open one for you. And no matter who opened it, anyone can contribute to it throughout your life. Parents, grandparents, friends, anyone. You or your guardian withdraw these funds as needed to pay for school. Each state runs its own 529 program, and you can open an account through many financial institutions and other administrators. A quick Google search can lead you to several 529 providers. Now, there are two types of 529 plans: education savings accounts, ESAs, and prepaid tuition plans. An education savings account, ESA, is an investment account where investments can grow tax deferred, meaning you won't pay taxes on your earnings while your money is growing. Plus, withdrawals from the account are tax free if they're used for qualified education expenses like tuition, fees, textbooks, and room and board. That's a huge deal. Prepaid tuition plans are a pay now, attend later kind of deal. So basically, you buy your tuition to an in state college ahead of time to lock in today's tuition prices. Then, when looking to attend years later, your tuition is covered. So, these plans usually can't be used to pay for your room and board, but they can save you on the rising cost of tuition. So, definitely something to look into when considering how to pay for college. Lastly, we have tuition insurance. So, college is a big and long term investment. A lot can happen in 4 years, and while you're attending, you might have to leave unexpectedly due to circumstances out of your control. So, you're thinking, is there a way to protect your investment? And the answer is yes. Tuition insurance will reimburse you for your tuition, on campus housing, and fees if you withdraw from school due to an accident, injury, or other reason that's covered under your plan. Tuition insurance on average costs around 1% of your total tuition. Covered reasons include if you withdraw due to serious injury or illness. These can include physical health conditions like a head injury or chronic illnesses such as autoimmune disorders or diabetes. It also includes mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, or severe stress. However, there are many situations that are not covered. For example, if you leave because you're no longer interested in pursuing your degree, or you can't afford tuition, or you're on academic probation, you likely wouldn't qualify for a tuition reimbursement. So, to get coverage, you have to buy tuition insurance before the start of the school year. You can buy an individual tuition insurance policy on your own, or you may be able to get a policy through your school. So make sure you ask. If you have a history of any sort of health conditions that concern you, again, tuition insurance might be a good idea. However, If it is not something that you're concerned about, tuition insurance may not be worth the extra cost. So again, just take time to learn about the overall cost and investment, and if there are any potential plans that may work for you. So we covered a lot today, but in summary, just know that when it comes to the type of financial aid and payment options, you have definitely a number of options available. And it's time to start researching to find out what scholarships, grants, loans, and accounts are right for you. Your first step is to estimate the cost of college. You can find a school's cost of attendance on their website. Add in any sort of personal living costs as well, that might not be included, like transportation, how you want to consider getting back and forth on campus, any sort of like extracurricular or entertainment costs, and food. And make sure that you have a budget that you're comfortable sticking to. Next, fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile to determine how much need-based financial aid you can get from the government and your school. This will be a great first step in knocking down your costs. Now it's time to look for scholarships and grants, aka the free money. Your school may offer scholarships based on your grades, interests, talents, identity, and more. A quick internet search can lead you to entire websites dedicated to finding scholarships and grants that are a good fit for you. Don't forget to accept all the free money you're offered before you start accepting loans. Again, no matter how near or far college is for you, it's never too late or too soon to start saving. Start putting extra money away in accounts like 529 savings plans that can provide plenty of tax benefits when you use it to pay for education. If you still need some help paying for school after using free money and savings, consider loans. You can apply for federal loans and aid from your school using the FAFSA or CSS profile. If those aren't enough, you can also explore private loans and ISAs. The last step is to keep track of all deadlines and applications. It may help to keep a spreadsheet to make sure you submit and accept all of your aid on time. Finally, celebrate because paying for college is not an easy job. But if you know where to look, you have the power to make it affordable. So we thank you for attending today's session.